All right, let's do it live on a Football Friday, Draft 2, Day 2. Merely Bo, Great Z. How you living? We're so close to Anjou. We had the Anjou. It was all there for us. We were I don't maybe
we're gonna
very
go.
Close
I
at
think
all,
we're going
like
0 for 2 on Anjou.
We were.
It's
it was
an
all
0
set
for
up.
2 Anjou.
I was so excited. I was getting you hot tubs.
I
Listen,
had warmed to the idea.
well,
I was
and
ready.
It would be warm. In all reality, it might have been everything you'd want in life.
It
You
might
love
have
hot
been-
tubs.
It might have been my coup de grace.
You love a hot tub.
Love a hot tub.
So now a hot tub on a cool Ohio night, and all of a sudden the hot tub is full of au jus with prime rib ready to be dipped.
Yeah.
That's how close.
And the way I was envisioning it too is I'd have a good like a ladle that I could ladle mashed potatoes out and then just right into the au jus, right into my mouth. It'd be great. Couldn't be too deep of a ladle because then that's a hard
No, you don't want that.
transition, but a
I
shallow
like it,
ladle.
A shallow
like
ladle.
my wine. Oh man, I had my
Listen,
wine picked out. 2015 Ponte Canet. It would have been great.
Not the way it went. You obviously were live on the,
Boy,
on the
was
network
I.
last night,
Boy,
breaking
was
all
I
this
live.
down. My phone started to vibrate watching the second act of Bootsy's big debut last night on the stage, and I started to
Why
get indication.
can I ask why schools are doing things that idiotic?
I made my complaints known to the district. Like, let's look at the dates.
Just look at the
and
calendar. This is not hard.
No. Yeah. So.
Okay.
Yeah, I made it
Carry
known. So we were able to
It's
get.
as outrageous as not being able to watch a Cavs playoff game in the Cleveland area.
Yeah, unless you have old school cable like me, you pay
Right.
$15,000 a month. Unless you do that, you can't.
Anyway, yes.
It'd be disingenuous of us to come on here and say this is exactly how we thought this was going to go.
No.
You and I have spent 2 months talking about weapons. Initially, our chatter was around Shador and
Quarterback.
Cam at the top, quarterback no matter what. You've said many times, and I concurred with you many times on this program, that number 2 had to either be the franchise quarterback for this team or turn into the franchise quarterback for this team and lead to the acquisition of that
Which
player.
it now has the potential to be the latter.
I just want to push back on that.
Potential to be.
I'm glad that you emphasize potential, because here's the thing about the NFL draft. We were at 2 this year. It feels like that the quarterback they really liked was Cam Ward. It feels like, by the way, the whole NFL liked Cam Ward.
Well, we kind of started saying it might be if it's a one quarterback draft, you got to get to one. And they could not, because you can't compel somebody to trade with you. And so in their mind, getting a future one is the next best thing to trying to bring it here. Now, you and I both would have been thrilled to have Travis Hunter be a Cleveland Brown.
Mm-hmm.
Thrilled.
And what you just said was the point I was going to make on the quarterback.
Right.
If you don't pick one, it's very difficult to get someone who is at 1 to come out of it unless they just recently picked theirs. So the candidates at 1 next year that have franchise-ish quarterbacks would be like New England. You almost need like New England at 1, and then maybe you can package your picks to go to 1. But if it's any other team who's in a similar boat as you, if they're sitting at 1, and let's just say it is Arch, there's no compensation.
Nope.
That
I don't
makes
think
that
he's
team
coming
trade
out, but
He's
yes.
not. He's going to play 2 years at Texas. It's everybody in college football knows it. But whoever it may be next year, Drew Aller, whoever, if he's that guy, he's not. You can't acquire him. You couldn't acquire Cam Ward this year.
Well, we had said that for a very, very long time, right? There's
Yeah.
no easier place to go than from 2 to 1.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's tough. It feels like – so there's a couple of things. Number one, the Browns have, in my opinion – again, this is my opinion – an opportunity to come out of this draft with – come out of the first, hour tonight with Mason Graham, Shador Sanders, and let's call it Travion Henderson.
Okay.
And a future first. That would be a home run. If you told me that's how they came out of this draft through 36 picks, I'd say,
Let's go.
holy moly.
Let's go.
However, I don't think that's going to happen. My interpretation of 2 things. First thing being the trade itself to acquire the future first. That is done, in my opinion, not just to be like, oh, we want to get an asset. It's to say we do not feel like outside of Cam Ward that we are finding a surefire franchise quarterback in this draft.
Fair.
The second part of that leads me to believe this is it would have been very easy to give a fourth, a fifth, couple of sixths, maybe a fifth and a future fifth, whatever, to Kansas City last night.
Yep.
And to have gone from 36 to 32, kept 33, or go from 33 to 32 for nothing.
Nothing.
And taken Shedeur right there. So I would love it still, but I am not expecting that. So now, to me, my focus turns to tonight, and quarterback on the big picture is it's going to be Flacco, Kenny Pickett, and I think we're going to end up in the third, fourth round with. Now in the third round, I think Milrose in play. I think at 67, if Milrose, Sanders, or Shuck were there, I think at that point they're all in play. But it feels like you're more likely going into what I've been saying along is a possibility, which is the McCord, Howard, Gabriel.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe I have no idea, but maybe you have to throw Ewers in there at that. Like, who knows? But that group, and I've kind of thought it was the McCord, Howard, Gabriel group, but who knows? That's what this all signals to me. Now, the Browns have the ability to take everybody on the board right now. I think it is critically important. I've been saying it all along, and these are my beliefs. Weapons, 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 weapons. I think if you look at today, you have 4 picks. I would love to see a running back, a wide receiver, a tight end, quarterback, offensive tackles, weapon adjacent. Fine with that. If we were to venture onto the defensive side of the ball, I really think there are only 2 positions that you can even think about, in my opinion.
Okay.
Safety.
Yeah, need one.
Like a free safety. Like right now you got Rocket Hickman and you've got Delpit.
You need another.
A free safety. Or you could say I'm going to get another box safety and we're going to play, more dimey, which would be the kid from South Carolina. I don't know how to pronounce his name.
Yeah,
but who's high on a lot of boards. And then the other would be linebacker. And linebacker to me would signify
JOK, right?
That you have to plan for JOK. And the fact that Jordan Hicks is in his 30s and is on the last year of his contract. Like, you've got Devin Bush back, you've got some young guys, but you don't have that room solidified if there's no JOK. I think you could be fine there for sure, but to me that feels like that would be it. So you have 4 picks. I really hope 3 of the 4 today at least are on offense. I would like 4 of 4 to be on offense.
Yeah.
But we'll see. You're set up right now, I think, to get 2 great weapons. Like in my mind, the list that I would want is either Judkins, Travion, or Caleb Johnson if they left him, or whatever running back.
Pick a running back, whichever one. Yeah, they all have their attributes. We've talked about Judkins and Travion a lot.
Receiver, you got Burden out there, but he's more of an inside guy. I think we probably would.
The big kid from Iowa State would be intriguing.
Yeah, Noel.
Yeah,
he would be intriguing. I think Trey Harris from Mississippi would be intriguing.
Yeah,
and then tight ends. There are really 4 of them, but I'm going to put them in the order they are typically ranked, which would be Mason Taylor, Arroyo, who I love, Fannin, and then Ferguson from Oregon, who's a seam stretcher. But to me, you need to hit – let's say we're passing quarterback down, then I want those guys, and then your 4th pick can be, if you want to take a quarterback, you want to take a tackle, you want to take a safety, you want to take a linebacker, like fine. Yeah. But I really do think we need to get a running back, a wide receiver, and a tight end today.
All of this to be said, while it would have been awfully exciting to have Travis Hunter and it would have been cool to have him in the operation, it's a hell of a haul. It's a ton of picks, and Mason Graham was viewed as one of the 5 blue chip. There were 5 blue chip guys. Cam Ward actually wasn't one of them.
No, he was counted. That's how we kept getting to 6.
That was 5 with an asterisk, but it was Abdul Carter, Travis Hunter, Mason Graham, Ashton Genty, and Will Campbell. Those were the 5. If we were at the combine, it was like these 5 are dudes. So Mason Graham's one of those dudes. So you got that dude, and you got a bounty of picks coming back next year in what is considered by most people to be the much better draft, much deeper draft. You have 2 ones now that are in the mix. So there is some real value that you're going to have that you're going to have at your disposal. A lot of bullets in the chamber. But here's the thing about picks.
They're theoretical.
And you got to actually pick them.
You have to execute.
And they have to be dudes. Because you can have all the draft capital you want, but if you don't draft players, this pick at 33 needs to be a dude. 36 needs to be a dude. 67 needs to be someone who plays. Mason Graham needs to be a Pro Bowl D tackle.
Yes.
You pick him 5th overall. Like, you better be a Pro Bowl D tackle.
The one thing
that he is,
that you can take solace in, as you mentioned, is, and we did talk about when I went through the avenues of possibility, right? Which was trade up for Cam Ward, take Shador. That's obviously not happening. Take, or didn't happen in the first round, I should say. Take Travis Hunter, take Abdul Carter, or trade down. And when we discussed trading down, what I had said many times is, I'm pretty sure you want to stay in the top 6 because that allows you to still get a blue chip player. So, and not all blue chip players are equal. Travis Hunter, it's tough is because he feels like somebody who maybe can make us rethink the way we think about what human beings are capable of in the National Football League, much like Shohei Ohtani has changed what people think about the way that a player can play position and hit and pitch in Major League Baseball. So that's a tough thing to give up, and it's theory, and we have been historically bad at executing after a trade down. It's just the facts. The Browns have not been successful historically executing after a trade down. They will have to be in this case because I think it's critical to obviously the success of this franchise. We do have a lot of needs. I do like the haul. If you had said, I think to most people, the Browns traded down from 2 to 5 and they got the Jags first and 26.
Yep.
You would have said, okay.
Fine. Well, we said anytime trade down had to include another one.
The fact that it also included 36, to me, made it a very interesting, appealing, all of those things. I understand why they did it. Now the onus will be on the front office here to execute on those assets so that when you look at this in 5, 10, 15 years, that Mason Graham, pick 36, and that future first are equal to or greater than Travis Hunter, who I think most people think is ending his career in Canton. Now, he might not.
He might not. No, he is. And even in our conversation with him, like one of the things that, and we would ask various folks who would come on with us, like, okay, what do you do with him? What's the plan? And we went through about 1 billion different machinations of what the plan would be with him. This is one of those trades where I honestly see it from both sides. I understand it from our perspective. We went from 3 to 5. We picked up another 1. We picked up a 2. Most people said that once you get past 10, the difference between 10 and 40 is not much. They're all kind of in the same. So now you have 2 picks in that range. Big value there. You got one of the blue chip stocks in this draft in Mason Graham. That's a win too, right? So you got one of the guys who feel like, now here's the part though that's the other side of it. I get Jacksonville's side too. They got Brian Thomas. They got Trevor Lawrence. Now they got Travis Hunter. They've got the 2 backs. Like, they're ready to go.
They are.
So what they're looking, and this was something we learned last night in the draft, is teams come at this from different perspectives. We have a lot of holes to fill, so we need a lot of at-bats to fill those holes because of everything that's happened. Jacksonville doesn't. Jacksonville needed a weapon. They wanted something that would put them on par because they believe in their quarterback, who they took number 1 overall, and they want to be they hit a home run with Thomas, who's a stud, and they said, all right, how do we compete with Kansas City and Buffalo and Cincinnati at the top of this? What do we got to do?
Houston.
And Houston in our own division. We got to score 30 a game.
Well, guess what? That division, Tennessee takes a quarterback.
Yeah. Travis there.
Travis goes to Jacksonville on a big trade up, and Indianapolis takes Tyler Warren.
They got Tyler Warren. So
that was a division that was just pure weapons, and Houston is out of the first round. Pure weapons.
And 2 of those teams, Jacksonville and Houston, feel like we got to go now.
Yep.
We got quarterbacks. We got to go now. And so we're going to load up because we know we got to score 30 a game. We're not at that point.
We're not. So I was asked a question if this trade signifies that the Browns are in a full-on rebuild. Because, yes, they've, in some sense, giving Myles Garrett that contract, that doesn't sound like a rebuild. And I said, not necessarily. I said that trade, to me, signifies much more that we just don't have the quarterback. Because the Patriots don't make that trade. The Patriots are in a very similar spot to us right now. I think kind of overall, I would say we probably have a little more talent on our roster
but
overall.
They have the quarterback.
But they have the quarterback. So they wouldn't have made that trade with Jacksonville.
No, because they need a lot.
My guess. And they would say, well, let's get the best weapon in the draft for our young quarterback. We don't have that quarterback. And I think this trade is reflective of two things. And I said at the top, if you're just joining us, it says to me that they are not into the quarterbacks that were in that next tier behind. Now, maybe they were into Jackson Dart. We won't know if he would have been there at 33, but they are not in. It does not feel to me like they're going to take Shador, Shuck, or Milroe, and I've been saying that on Milroe all along, at 33 or 36. And so that's why you make that trade. You say, okay, quarterback's going to be next year. Pickett's our swing this year. We're probably going to add a guy late. So I'm just saying I don't know the answers clearly. Don't have the scores. I mean, last night.
Look what we've done the last 2 months.
Yeah, right. No. So
not on this.
But this jives, what I'm saying now jives with what seems to be like very easy dots to connect and logical conclusions to make. I will also say, and I've heard from a few people that I've reached out to last night as well, that people are both surprised and not at all surprised that Shedeur Sanders was not drafted in the first round. Why are they surprised? People are surprised because whether you thought, and as some like Dane Brugler, I think 34th, whether you thought overall, that he was a surefire first-round talent or you thought he was at that. Most people thought he was kind of middle of the first round, late first-round talent, or into early second round, that because you're a quarterback with that evaluation. By the way, rated on basically everybody who does this for a livings in terms of media evaluators. Clearly a team in the NFL took Jackson Dart in, but that, yes, Shedeur was probably closer to Dart than he was to Cam Ward in the ultimate evaluations, but not for everybody, not for Emory Hunt, not for Bucky Brooks, not for Mel Kiper.
No.
But that he was the number 2 and the best pocket passer in this draft.
Mm-hmm.
So people are surprised that he has not been drafted because of that. People are not surprised that he hasn't been drafted because the reason he has been such a lightning rod in the media has, I think, some teams skittish about drafting him.
Yeah.
Because, and you can say the arm talent and he's not elite in anything, and that's totally fine. But there are plenty of quarterbacks who, in the right system, and I think ours certainly is one that he would excel in, would do that. And I'm not saying this is not why the Browns maybe don't take him, and maybe they do. But it feels to me, and I'd be thrilled if they did, believe me, it feels like they're not going to based on the trade and then the fact that they could have gotten him for.
If you wanted him, you could have went to. You hit it. That what you just did earlier in the show, and you described like at 32. If you really liked him, that's a no cost. To go from 33 to 32 to get him and make sure that it's done and you don't have to worry about
fifth-year option, all of that.
Yeah.
So you didn't.
They didn't.
So even if because once you got 36, you could have gone from 36 to 32. Maybe you had to sweeten it up a little bit for
barely,
the Chiefs,
though.
But not
like
much.
For what?
Right.
Right. No.
So you did not do that.
No.
So I think that when you look at the fact that he doesn't have that elite trait, again, I think he fits in certain places and will run certain style offenses really well. Like if he ends up in Seattle, now that they've got Clint Kubiak there, right? Isn't Clint Kubiak now the OC?
Is there, yeah.
Like that makes sense to me. If he runs our offense, if he ends up with the Rams, if he ends up with somebody who's running kind of that style, totally makes sense. But I think you have to have an organization that is, I think, probably in a better spot than a total rebuild spot.
Yeah.
Because you said Deion Sanders is the face of college football now. He's the face and voice of college football.
Mm-hmm.
And he is in front of a microphone all the time, and he is fiercely loyal and defending his kids. And I think not even intentionally, I think he might inadvertently end up being perceived as critical of the coaching staff that Shadeur's playing for, of the way he's being used, about a great many things.
Yeah.
And so I think there's something that comes. I think if Shedeur Sanders was, I keep using the name because it makes me laugh. It makes me think of LD. Bob Schmohawk. Bob Schmohawk got drafted last night.
Yeah, he would have. Yeah, he would have. Yeah. What he's done on the field is worthy of that, yes.
And this is not my opinion, by the way. I've texted a bunch of people in the last 24 hours whose opinions I trust and who know the league and the thought processes a great deal better than I do. That's the biggest reason why he's not available. Now, he's going to go today.
Yeah.
He's going to go today. I think, though, when you look at just the actions of the Browns, that says to me he's not going to be a Brown. And by the way, what holds true for him holds true for Shuck and Milroe.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think that those are going to be the picks. So now you have an opportunity to get a couple of weapons, and I think you've made the declaration that, yeah, sure, we'll take a shot on somebody later in this draft at quarterback, but that we think Kenny Pickett's our real swing this year, former first-round pick, and that if need be, we'll go for it again next year. And we have 2 first rounds to try and make that happen. There are clearly no guarantees, but you're going to try to make that happen. As we're actually watching, so in our room, as we look over here, we're watching a television, and they're showing one of the guys I would love to be on the Cleveland Browns, Travion Henderson or his teammate Quinshon Judkins. I think both of those guys who are in the top 10 players left according to Daniel Jeremiah. So you got the safety there, who I think is interesting. You got the linebacker Mason Taylor. You've got running backs and a wide receiver, Travion Judkins, the receiver being Luther Burden. And then I mentioned linebacker is kind of, we would have to confront the reality if JOK's situation is worse than his, and that's the kid from UCLA, Carson Schwessinger, who people think is an incredible player. But
that's only that would be telling me that there's real JOK concern if that's the way you go, because we have a lot of needs, and like linebacker would be down the list normally. Off-ball
linebacker in particular.
Off-ball. What? Real quickly on the – I told you about this, and you and I talked about this earlier in the week on Shador. Now, I was watching, right? So I was watching primarily ESPN.
Okay.
And they did the low-hanging fruit thing, and they've done the low-hanging fruit with him for 2 months.
Yep.
He's an easy talk on Get Up or SportsCenter or NFL Live. He's an easy talk on the draft last night. Cam Ward is being picked number 1 overall. There is no debate about it.
Yep.
And they spent 2 minutes before his name was called doing Shador Sanders stuff. They did it all night last night.
Yep.
And it was one of those instances where, and I think there's one thing that I heard Pelissaro say this morning. Look, we have to listen to the NFL on these guys. Here's the only pushback I would give on this, because it's not about, and he should have added this, in my opinion, it's not about Shador on the field or even the talent physically. It's what you said. That's where people have trepidation, because the people who just analyze tape and the people who just analyze what he is physically, like Dane had him 34, Mel had him, I think, 4 overall.
So you watch these? I heard Mel every time.
He's like, what is going on? He didn't understand it. Like, he compared him to the Rodgers fall and all of that. Like, he just didn't get it. Had a hard time with it. But Mel's analysis is based on film, and that's it. I mean, even Bucky Brooks, who had him as the number 1, Risden had him really high, had him ahead of Cam Ward.
Emory Hunt had him as the number 1.
Yeah, so there's a lot of these guys, evaluators, who look at tape. What do they look at? They look at tape. They look at measurables to make their mock drafts and to do their analysis, right? NFL teams do the other part too.
They do a lot. Yep.
And that is where the red flags were. I'm with you. That's why this drop. It has nothing to do with who he is as a player. It's what are you signing up for?
Yep.
And that's it. So it was great. By the way, I know we got HOF coming up. I believe we had this. Pittsburgh's getting Rodgers. There's not a doubt in my mind they're getting Rodgers.
They have to be.
They know they're getting him. They're drafting like they're getting him.
Drafted a defensive tackle.
Yeah, dude. Who's good. He's a good one. He wrecked the Ohio State game out there.
Yep.
Harmon did. He's a good player. All right. The NFL schedule released. That was awkward. I don't know if you saw that on the TV. It was awkward. Like when they announced that.
What, the
they
schedule
brought Laura
is?
Colledge and Colleen Wolfe out, and they kind of made like
We couldn't hear what they were saying.
They made this whole big deal, and it was like, so you're giving us an announcement to tell us about an announcement?
That's right.
Is that what just happened?
How about Clay Matthews opening the thing? I had no idea where that was going.
Neither did they.
We were watching it. Nobody did.
Neither did they.
Nobody did.
Those are your hot topics today, presented by UH, official healthcare partner.
Kind of ended up in the best place it could have.
I think you're right. Yes, there was a lot of ways that could have gone. Official healthcare partner of your Cleveland Browns. The HOF will join us coming up next. You'll listen to Cleveland Browns Daily. We're presented by Ballybet, official sports betting partner of your Cleveland Browns, and Howard Hanna Real Estate, official real estate partner of your Cleveland Browns on 850 ESPN Cleveland. All right, Elk & Elk, serious lawyers, serious injuries. Call 1-800-ELK-OHIO for a free case review. Elk & Elk's proud partner of your Cleveland Browns. It has been a minute since we've talked to the HOF. He joins on the Twisted Tea Hotline presented by Twisted Tea Hard Iced Tea, a sponsor of your Cleveland Browns. Keep it twisted, Cleveland. He's handing out meat sticks to Leroy Butler last night, having the time of his life in Green. How you doing, HOF? Set the scene for us, buddy.
Oh, I'm so happy to talk to you guys. I'm having a wonderful time here in Green Bay at the NFL draft, and it is so good to hear your voice. I don't know if I'm going to ever be able to talk to somebody on the outside again. The communications network here in Green Bay, Wisconsin has been overloaded and went down last night. 250,000 people outside in Green Bay, Wisconsin on a night that was a bit nipply. It was like 40 degrees here. I couldn't send a text message. I was trying to call in last night. The show couldn't do that. I had a Barstool Sports show I couldn't do. I was basically on an island with 250,000 cheeseheads, and it was pretty awesome.
Like, we couldn't even get Mason Graham couldn't call in. They had to find him a landline somewhere so that he could call in last night and do his media availability. The cell phone towers were overrun.
For the folks, HOF, who have not been to Green Bay, Wisconsin, what is there an Ohio equivalent of Green Bay, Wisconsin? Like what, so that the audience who's not been there can make sense of just how small it is.
Yeah. So if you would take Canton and you'd put it all the way down in the southeast corner, maybe down by Athens or something, but not close, like definitely not close to Athens, but like all by itself down there. But that's the town, 250,000 people. So you can imagine, right? You got the city of Green Bay, 250,000, and then you put another 250,000 people there. It makes sense that their cell phone towers don't work because it's a small town. It's a blue collar. It's a factory town. Like it is as blue collar Americana as it comes. So I think Canton's probably like your best comparison, but it's also not near Cleveland and it's not near Akron. Like it is small and by itself.
It is interesting, HOF, that you have this in the football mecca. I thought that was exciting. Good to see all of those things. What was kind of your reaction, and what was the reaction of, I don't know if you happen to be positioned by any Browns fans or anything, to the way things unfolded last night? Because if we're honest about it, I think many of us thought going into last night there was probably a 90% chance the Browns were taking Travis Hunter, a 10% chance that they were going to trade out of that pick. And obviously it was 100% they were going to trade out of that pick, because we found out that trade had been done for weeks, in fact. What was kind of your reaction to the move, the haul that they did in fact get, and now the pressure that is to execute on those picks?
So when I was 12 years old for Christmas, I asked Santa for a new boombox, the dual cassette boombox.
Why wouldn't you?
Record and
that's right.
Dub.
That's how you make mixtapes for your crushes, HOF.
Exactly. I mean, how else are you going to do that back in what was that? 1996?
Back in the good old days.
And Grandma and Grandpa, they were not exactly the best secret keepers, right? So I knew it was coming. Christmas morning, I wake up, it's under the tree, I unwrap the present, I'm happy, right? Thankfully, I never had the moment where I thought the boombox was coming, and then I wake up Christmas morning, and it's a gift card for Christmas next year. Now, it says, I'll get you a boombox and a few cassette decks, and you know what? By next year, we're going to be able to have those CDRs, so you can download music on Napster and then make mixtapes electronically, technically advances. But you know what? There still was a little bit of disappointment, and I was at a Hall of Fame watch party in one of these cool, houses that they basically just turn into party houses.
Hold on a second. HOF.
Okay,
are you saying that this is a watch party that is just for members of the Hall of Fame?
No, sorry. Let me be clear. So this was sponsored by the Hall of Fame. Their partner is Constellation Energy.
Okay, all right. I thought you get to go into your own house. Say gold jackets only. Sorry.
No. Yeah,
that's a good idea, by the way.
I think they do have the Heisman House. Yeah, all right, but hey, let's go in. I mean, they can't be that expensive. This town is not exactly super wealthy. But no, so they had the Hall of Famers were there on behalf of the Hall of Fame to entertain and to watch the draft with the Constellation Energy guests and everything. So it was like me and Leroy Butler, Dave Robinson, Jerry Kramer, some other Packer Hall of Famers. So we were there, and I, of course, I'm always looking for the Browns fans to cozy up because, we want to talk Browns. You want to be with your people. you're watching the draft, which has always been the Super Bowl for us in recent memory. It's always been our Christmas morning. And so when the trade went down after, basically my son had already ordered the Travis Hunter jersey, we were a little bit disappointed, to be totally honest. And it took a bit because, like we said, technologically we were having some troubles finding out what was happening until we learned kind of what the haul was. And I had a chance to take a deep breath and realize, man, I mean, if there's ever been a fleecing, when you knew somebody just had to have a player and you were able to really take advantage of them. I mean, that's what Andrew Berry, the haul that we got was just incredible, but it still was a little tough to go through that number 2 pick and see somebody else take Travis Hunter, who I think is going to be a fantastic pro. And obviously he has the potential to do something in the NFL that we haven't seen in a long, long time. And that's played both ways.
Yeah, I think once you see my kids were the same way, by the way. I mean, they had the number 12s ready. They were locked into it. That was a big explainer for me with that one once that went down. But once you saw the haul, Hoff, then you're like, okay, I get this. And I made this point to Z earlier. Now's the hard part, right? Now you got to land the picks. Like when you have the holes that we have on this roster, 33 needs to be a starter and a dude. 37.
Who helps you score the football.
That's right. 37 needs to be a starter and a dude. Mason Graham needs to be a Pro Bowl caliber defensive tackle. That's what he needs to be. Next year's 2 picks have to be players. So, you've done this. Now you have the opportunity, but now you have better be sure in your process and you have to hit on these picks, buddy. That's the part that's the tricky part.
Well, that's the problem. When you do look at those draft trade boards and everybody kind of uses the same one, you realize, okay, the Browns won this one, but that's when their X's and
their theories.
Y's and variables that they're theories, right? And until they're actually human beings, it really doesn't matter. And so you're right. You still got to be able to identify the guys and turn them into great players. And if Mason Graham turns out to be an okay player, you're going to say it probably wasn't a great decision, especially if you look at Travis Hunter and he becomes a star in the league, not only as a performer, but, as a personality. So really the hard part is, can you turn what is potentially great draft capital into great players that impact the Browns season, and not just, down the line in a few years, but we need some impact dudes right now. And I think Z hit it. We need people that can score the football on offense.
Yeah. I mean, we've been preaching weapons. And by the way, I just want to say this is a very exciting moment for me, not to just be talking to Hoff, but do you know what the Hoff was doing right before he was talking with us? Talking with, I
saw him last night looking at a cheese curd taco. Was he doing that?
No, he was talking with an all-time Hall of Famer in our industry. The great Dan Patrick.
Oh, Dan Patrick. So
you were on with DP before us, huh, Hoff? How was that? I love DP.
Yes, sir.
That's my boy. I don't know if you know this or not, but he and I used to break bread every Saturday night in New York for a few years.
So I got to give Z some flowers because you actually connected us. Now, I've been on his show a few times, but didn't have that personal relationship that you did.
Yeah.
Once I got into the media world, you
right.
were so nice, and he was incredible.
He's
connected
the best.
us, and Dan reached out to me right away, and he's like, "Hey, whatever you want, let me know when we get on a call." And he basically gave me media training, at my convenience, to be able to have the best interview in sports media, the best interviewee in sports media, to be able to just take time with you and talk about what makes a good interview, what you should think about, what he's thinking about. I mean, it was unbelievable, incredibly. You couldn't put a value on it, what he did for me. And then now to, be kind and have me back on his show, now that we're in Green Bay, and be able to allow me to promote my beef sticks and even eat one live on camera was it was special, man. It's just so cool. He's a great man.
I love seeing the Hoff last night slinging beef.
Oh, man.
Baby. Those things look great. They look great.
Come on.
Got a cheddar?
We're wearing Hoff beef gear everywhere.
What are your flavors on the beef sticks, Hoff?
So we've got a ton of really good ones, and that was one of the reasons I decided to go with Prem Meats as my partner, is because they were actually the ones that used to process my deer, still process my deer, and make, the buffalo blue cheese bratwurst and the different flavors of jerky and beef sticks. And so my favorite, and actually my kid's favorite, it's like crack cocaine beef stick. It's an apple cheddar beef stick. And, typically you buy a beef stick, and they're good. I mean, I love all meats, let's be honest. Any meat in my mouth, I'm a happy guy. But with the beef sticks that they have, they're very buttery because of the high fat content, high marbling of the cattle that we use, but also the recipe that they use. And so it's got this amazing, like, buttery feel, like when you bite into a really juicy, delicious steak. But they also, the spices they use in their apple cheddar, they use great Wisconsin cheddar, but they use like a cinnamon. So it's almost like candy. I did a interview today for with Bo Allen. He does like a Green Light podcast with Chris Long. So I was on there today, and I let him try one, and he was like, "Man, this is like candy." I'm like, "Yeah, that's why my kids are always fighting over it when they get home, and we can't keep it in our fridge." So that's my favorite. But we also have the jalapeno and cheddar. We've got the hot and spicy. We got the teriyaki. So your standard flavors. But I'm excited to continue to expand that because those things are they're on a different level. Even when Dan bit in, he was being kind to first try it, but he bit in and he goes, "Oh, wow." He was like, "Wow, this is way better than I expected."
A surprising beef stick. I love it.
Man.
Hoff, if you all right, so we have Mason Graham in the first round at 5. We have a bunch of picks tonight, 2 in the first 10 with 33 and 37. You've been in a position that Joel Bitonio's been in, right? Where you're the veteran and you're like, boy, let's make a go of this thing. You've got Flacco, you've got Pickett. Pickett's former first-round pick. That could be your swing at quarterback. What do you make of this roster, and what do you think needs to be added to it tonight?
Well, I think the obvious one in the question is who's going to be your quarterback. I mean, we were all tickled pink when Joe Flacco re-signed, and, I saw the Browns media recently posting some pictures of him arriving, and I think there was a picture of him with his kids last night, maybe at an Indians game. So there's a lot of feel-good around Flacco, but I think you also have to know, he's not Joe Flacco that I played against when, I was still playing. He's an older guy. I think he can still sling the ball. There's no question about that, but who's going to be his heir apparent? Who's going to be that guy that is going to maybe compete with him for the job potentially this season, or maybe who is the guy that can really learn a lot and become the quarterback of the future, being able to be mentored by a guy like a Joe Flacco, which is something that, I think is such an important thing in today's NFL, is to have that veteran that has that playing experience that's willing to work with a rookie quarterback and help develop and sort of be his right-hand man on the field and in the locker room and in meeting rooms. And so, I'm no expert. I've always liked Shedeur Sanders a lot because my son is like he's like a mini Mel Kiper. Like, he knows everything about every one of these guys, and he gets to come tonight. I'm announcing one of the picks, and I'm trying to twist the NFL's arm to let him come out there with me
that's
because
awesome.
He's been saying for a while, like, hey, if we can get Shedeur Sanders in the second round, it'll be awesome. So, like, if it actually happens and he gets to come out there with me, it would be so cool.
That would be amazing. I have to ask you this, though, because maybe I'm not reading the right tea leaves. I hope I'm reading the wrong tea leaves. But it kind of feels to me, Hoff, like the Browns have made a pretty clear declaration that they're not taking a quarterback at 33 or 36 tonight. And my logic for that is the initial trade, which was to acquire a future first-round pick. To me, that feels like that is done. That's saying we really liked Cam Ward. We couldn't get him, so now we're going to try to get assets for a quarterback next year, which is no sure thing, as we know. If a team doesn't want to trade the pick, they won't trade the pick. We couldn't get from 2 to 1 this year, for example. And then the fact that at the end of the first round, the Browns having 33 and 36 could have probably moved from 36, kept 33, and gotten to 32 with Kansas City for not much, or 33 to 32 if that's what was required, for nothing to lock up that quarterback, and they didn't do it.
I think you're right, but I think this is one consideration you should mention, though, is, in the first round, top of the first round, even as you slide back into the middle or the later parts of the first round, when you draft a quarterback there, he's your guy, and you become immediately tied to him, and it's not a player that you can move off of very easily if, for instance, you have him in the building for a year and you don't love him and you don't see that he's the guy of the future. In my draft class, I went third, and then the Browns, moved up. I think they traded with the Cowboys and got Brady Quinn, and he's your guy, right? And you're really tied to that player. But once you get into the second round, you're able to take flyers on quarterbacks like a Shedeur Sanders, and I think they knew that he wasn't going to go in the first round. And so now if you do take him in the second round, you get him in the building for a year, you got an opportunity to see what he can do, right? And maybe he takes over as the starter in the season at some point. Maybe he wins the job. I don't know. But at least he's there with you and you're around him for a full year. And then for sure and with conviction, like, yeah, we think this is the dude for the future. And then now you can assets around him next year with those 2 first-round picks. But if he's not, it's much easier to say, well, we didn't get it, so we still have those 2 picks next year, and then we could potentially trade our pick the following year to move up and to go, target a guy and then select him. And then now you really have an opportunity to say, okay, well, we didn't like Shedeur, it didn't work out, but boom, we're going to go pick a guy and put our assets together and find that franchise guy next year in a quarterback class that supposedly is going to be a lot deeper.
I hope you're right. I really do. I would love to see Shedeur here. What's crazy is I had said that if the Browns came out of the first round, or really out of the draft, I should say, to be fair, that if they came out of this draft with Travis Hunter and Shedeur Sanders, we were going to set up a hot tub. We were going to fill that hot tub with au jus, and I was going to baste in it in the au jus hot tub while dipping prime rib, eating it, had a mashed potato label, and I was going to have a fine bottle of Bordeaux, and this was going to be my celebration. And the crazy thing is that the Browns, and making no moves at all, requiring nothing of them other than picking where they were slotted at 2 and 33, could have done it.
Yeah.
But now there will be no au jus as Travis Hunter is down in Jacksonville. We make that trade, and again, I hope you're right with Shedeur. I think it is easier to move off quarterback than ever now, honestly, no matter where they're picked. Kenny Pickett's on his 3rd team. Mac Jones been moved around. Zach Wilson's been moved. All these guys are moving around. But you get Mason Graham, and the Browns had said clearly they thought that there were 5 blue-chip players or elite players in this draft, and that Mason Graham was one of them. What does Mason Graham bring to this team? Because unfortunately, I think a lot of our fans, and certainly us sitting here who are not in the war rooms, we look at this team, we say, you're the worst scoring offense in the NFL. You have an opportunity to get weapons. I'm pretty sure if the pick yesterday instead of Mason Graham was Ashton Genty, the vibe around the Browns from the outside is completely different. Inside, they're thrilled. They're elated here. But what does he bring to this team, and why should Browns fans, as a man who made his hay in the trenches, why should Browns fans be excited about adding Mason Graham to Myles Garrett and to Mike Hall and to Malik Collins and Isaiah McGuire and Joe Tryon-Shoyinka and Alex Wright and all of that?
Well, you just mentioned it. I mean, I think everybody saw the Super Bowl last year and how the Eagles won. Yeah, they had a good offense, but they won because their defensive line was incredible. So they allowed Vic Fangio and that defense to just sit into a cover 2 and say, hey, we dare you to try to run us out of it. We know you can't, because we've got this incredibly deep platooning defensive line that basically will not allow it to happen. And, oh, by the way, if you try to pass, we're going to win a one-on-one at some point because you can't hold up. And, I've played against Jim Schwartz defenses before. It's a bad feeling when they're rushing 4 dudes and all their 4 dudes can get home, because no matter how good you are on the O-line, it's hard to hold up against 2 or 3 good pass rushers. When you got 4 and you got a depth behind them that can come in and beat your starters with their backups, like, it is a really, really tough situation. And I think with Mason Graham, he is incredibly active. Like, the effort that he brings, the strength and quickness on the inside, he's so disruptive. He's got that first step quickness. I'm not going to say he's Aaron Donald, but that type of player that has that disruptive first step quickness. And then when you just pair him with those other great players, it's additive. It's the synergistic 1 + 1 = 3, because now he's getting one-on-ones instead of double teams if you don't have those other guys. And he's forcing the quarterback to get off his spot and not allowing the quarterback to step up, because Myles Garrett, what does he do best? He turns the corner and forces the quarterback to step up. A lot of times, if you don't have the interior pressure, nobody even notices that Myles just ran right past the left tackle, because the quarterback just steps up 2 steps because he's got a clean pocket. And so I think the Browns are really realizing, and Myles, after talking to him this morning and how excited he was about it, like, they realized, like, if we can get pressure on the interior, that just makes the guy that we just paid on the outside, Myles Garrett, even better. And now those plays where you didn't even notice him because the ball gets thrown, those are turned into sacks.
When you mentioned him as Aaron Donald, so this is somebody, for people who, everybody probably in this area watched the Michigan-Ohio State game, I think, and saw him dominate Michigan, dominate Ohio State, and was probably the best player on the field, certainly on that Michigan team that won the national championship. You've heard a lot of people say that about him. If you just look at the production numbers, it's 3 sacks, 3.5 sacks, 7 tackles for loss, 7.5 tackles for loss. How does somebody who does that in college, and educate us because I don't have those answers. I stay very well in my lanes. You've helped me with offensive line play. Now I guess I'm going to get a little education from the HOF on defensive line play. But how does somebody like that become a 10-sack-a-year guy in the NFL? Because I feel like if you're drafting a defensive tackle 5th overall, that's what you're thinking. You're thinking this is a double-digit sack Pro Bowl type of a player, because if he's not a 3-down player, you're not taking him 5th overall. So how do those numbers increase? And then I think the answer could lie in here. When you say that he was a read and react guy, sometimes a 2-gap guy, but now he's going to ask to just be in an attack front and attack, they think that opens that up. So how does he make that leap to be the player that he really needs to be taken where he was?
Yeah, thank you. You hit the nail on the head, right? It's all about the system that you're in, and we've seen that throughout NFL history. Like, you have these guys that are incredible players on the inside, and what they're asked to do sometimes doesn't highlight the things that they do best. And I'm not saying that it's not the best for the defense overall. If you've got a guy like a Cam Hayward, for instance, who's more of a, he's 2-gapping, he's holding his gap, he's taking on blocks, he's opening up lanes for their linebackers to run free. Like, whatever their strategy is on defense, it probably works for them on defense. But individually, when you take a guy from more of a 2-gap role and you put him in the Jim Schwartz role where they say, hey, I want you to line up on the edge, on the outside of this guard's shoulder, and use your quickness, use your ability to shoot the gap and to penetrate. As a former wrestler with an incredible feel for leverage, like, what we want you to do is disrupt. And he doesn't have to worry so much about, hey, I got to keep my gap, I got to watch these blocks, try to read these blocks. And they say, hey, disrupt, get in this gap, get to the quarterback, get to the ball carrier, create havoc, because that disruption on the line of scrimmage is what will allow our linebackers to run free, rather than you absorbing 2 or 3 blocks to let our linebackers run free. And I think pairing him with Myles Garrett, I think back to Warren Sapp when he was playing with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and I'm trying to remember the name of the outside pass rusher, the defensive end.
Dwayne The Rock Johnson?
That he played with him.
That was
No, I don't think that was him, but that would have been cool.
Oh, that was in college.
That was at Miami,
My bad.
It was Simeon Rice, wasn't it?
Simeon Rice?
Simeon Rice.
Yeah.
HOF.
Was that him?
Yeah,
Or
Simeon
am I
Rice.
just saying the wrong name?
Nope.
Anyways, so what they kind of did that people hadn't done up until that point, and it's really what won Tampa the Super Bowl, is they took Warren Sapp, instead of playing him over the guard, like the outside shoulder of the guard like most people do, they played him over the inside shoulder of the tackle. And now what really makes that hard for an offensive tackle is I got a guy out there who's already a problem. So I already know I got to get back as fast as I can, and I got to gain a little bit of width to be able to get to where that guy's rushing, and he's doing it so quickly. But now, because I got this really big, fast, quick defensive tackle that's lined up over me, he's rushing actually into me as well. So I got to use my inside hand to try to keep that defensive tackle away from me, because, by the way, he's also trying to grab me and stop me from going out to block Myles. So I'm using my inside hand to keep him away, but I also have to kind of slow down because my guard needs a little bit of time to get there. And if I just fly out of there and I turn my shoulders, now I'm going to get hit with a TE stunt, right? And they call it a read game. So basically that defensive tackle is lined up on the tackle's inside shoulder. He rushes right at my inside. I'm trying to keep him away. If I turn my shoulders at all, that defensive end now reads what I'm doing with my shoulders. He rushes up the field and then loops behind that defensive tackle. And then now they got a 2-on-1 on the guard with the defensive tackle because he's still inside of me, so I'm not really technically blocking him. But now the guard's in a hard spot. And they can just run that over and over and over again in passing situations, and it's almost impossible for a tackle to handle. And so I think opening up that part of his game and allowing him to get into that wide 3 technique, that 4-eye, which is the inside eye of the offensive tackle, is really what's going to unleash the potential for a guy named Mason Graham.
So kind of like Justin Smith, Alden Smith, when they used to do that with the Niners.
Exactly. That's exactly what they did. Yep.
Okay.
Did you eat the cheese curd taco?
Thankfully, I had not been inebriated enough, not enough
Come on.
Coors Lights yet to go for it. But tonight,
Come on, HOF.
I pinned that baby. I pinned that baby in my
Come
phone.
on.
I'm going to be back there tonight.
I need a review of a cheese curd taco. You're the best, buddy.
HOF.
There he
Thanks
goes.
for having me on, guys.
Oh,
Great
the
to
best.
hear your voices.
Pure joy.
Pure
Love
joy.
it. Pure joy.
The great HOF. There he is, joining us on the Twisted Tea Hotline, presented by Twisted Tea Hard Iced Tea, official sponsor of your Cleveland Browns. Hey, celebrate the excitement of the NFL Draft at the Crib, presented by Howard Hanna. Join Cleveland Browns alumni Josh Cribbs, John Greco, and Chomps today, 1 to 3, 1560 Queen Anne's Gate in Westlake. They educate you on the market and help you draft your dream home. You listen to Cleveland Browns Daily on 850 ESPN Cleveland.
Hello, I'm Michael Della Vella, and I want to invite you to The Crib Open House, hosted by Josh Cribbs and yours truly. It's a collaboration with Howard Hanna and the Cleveland Browns.
We are so excited to partner with the Browns. We've been doing so since 2020. And when you bring two legacy brands like the Cleveland Browns and Howard Hanna together, you get great results.
We had an absolutely amazing day today. So many people came through. You still have time. We are here Friday and we are here Saturday from 1 to 3.
I'm looking forward to meeting fans. That's one thing that I love doing, meeting people. And Phil Taylor's here today. Tomorrow, John Greco. And on Saturday, we have my guy, the older veteran, Reggie Langhorn will join us.
Do you want to buy a home? Do you want to sell a home? We have got you covered. Come on out, 1560 Queen Anne's Gate, Westlake, Ohio, The Crib Open House. Love to have you.
All right, second hour, Cleveland Browns Daily, presented by Ballybet, official sports betting partner of your Cleveland Browns, and Howard Hanna Real Estate, official real estate partner of your Cleveland Browns. Great friend of the program. He is the author of The Beast, which is sitting right here in front of Dr. Z at the moment. He is Dane Brugler of The Athletic. He joins us on the Twisted Tea Hotline, presented by Twisted Tea Hard Iced Tea, official sponsor of your Cleveland Browns. Keep it twisted, Cleveland. He is Dane Brugler. All right, buddy, you and I had talked a couple of times in the last week or so about all of this, and we said, well, if you come off of 2, it better be a Godfather offer. By your definition, is what was recouped for the Browns from going from 2 to 5 a Godfather offer?
I think it's debatable. I mean, I think they certainly did well with the return, getting next year's 1 and that second this year. Going into tonight, having 2 of the first 4 or 5 picks is certainly a power position where there's a lot of good talent left on the board. So tonight, and who knows, they might not be picking at 33. I'm sure they're getting plenty of calls about possibly moving back even more and pick up another third, pick up another 2026 second. So I think the trading is not done. I think that they're going to receive some more calls, and having 2 picks early tonight gives them the flexibility to take one of the guys and then maybe trade back and recoup some more picks. But I think this all comes back to the quarterback position and positioning yourself in next year's class to go get a quarterback. That to me, that's the statement the Browns made last night. It was more about let's put ourselves in position to go get our guy. What is our path to a quarterback? And I think they looked at this quarterback class and said, we like these guys, we just don't love them. All right, let's position ourselves for next year to go get that guy. And I think that's a tough pill to swallow for a lot of fans, with next year. But it sure seems like that's where they're thinking based on what they did last night.
I agree with you. That's the way I read it. They made that trade, and then they did not move back when it would have been very easy from 33 or 36 to 32 to make sure they got a fifth-year option, and they did not do so. So I'm with you. I think that means the quarterback this year is going to end up being, McCord, Howard, Gabriel, somebody later on, and they are not going to take a quarterback. So that being said, talk to us for a little bit about Mason Graham. He was the number 4 player on your board, one of the kind of consensus blue-chip guys. How does the production he generated at Michigan, how does that exponentially increase in the National Football League? Because I think when you draft a defensive tackle at that spot, he's got to be a guy that you think can get, double-digit sacks or be a complete game record, double-digit tackles for loss. How does that happen?
Yeah, and I go back to last year, just watching that Michigan team that won a national title. They had double-digit players on that team that got drafted last year. But you could not take your eyes off of number 55 when you watched that team. It was a tough thing to do. And, he might not look exactly like you want a defensive tackle that you're drafting top 5 to look in terms of the length, in terms of the body type. But all I know is you flip on the tape and he's a hard guy to block. And ultimately, that's what you want in defensive linemen. Give me the guys that are hardest to block. And that's Mason Graham. His ability to deconstruct blocks is so natural and easy for him. And I think that you look back to high school and his wrestling background and just the way he developed, how strong he is with his hands. He's a leverage monster. So he will get underneath guys and understand how to separate and detach from those blocks and just consistently live in the backfield. So Mason Graham's a guy that immediately when he was on the field looked like a different player for that Michigan defense. And he played on a defensive line that was loaded with really good talent, but it was still 55 that stood out over and over and over again. And I think, it's a player where you wish we had the testing information. We don't have that for him. All he did was the bench press throughout the process. So there's maybe some data points missing from his profile that you wish you had, but the tape is outstanding. And I think in this draft, and he was my number 4 overall player in the draft. So in this draft, you could certainly make the case he was worthy of that pick there at number 5.
Talking to great Dane Brugler of The Athletic, the author of The Beast. We have it sitting right here. And
I got a 3-hole punched in a binder, Dane. It's
I
beautiful.
I saw
young Gabriel.
I know you do.
Yeah,
I can always rely on you. Yeah.
Young Gabriel had it set up for us, Dane.
Awesome.
All right, we're sitting there at 33 and 36 then. And let's say that everybody here is on the same page, and like they are, that if they wanted a quarterback, they would have went up and got one.
I think so, yeah.
It's not going to be quarterback at 33 and 36. If let's go along with that for now. What should we do at 33 and 36? What is the best way? Because if this is a Godfather offer and everything you got back and all the assets and all of it, then you've got to hit and you have to take advantage of these picks that are there. If you're Andrew Berry, what do you do at 33 and 36?
Yeah, and I really don't think there's like a right or wrong answer. Like they have to go get this guy or that guy. I mean, I think there's a lot of different ways they can attack, and I can't wait to see how they do it. Because I mean, you look at it. I mean, Emerson, Newsome, potentially in contract years here. You know, Denzel Ward, health concerns, is corner like a Trey Amos, a direction they could go here. Donovan Ezeraku, the pass rusher out of Boston College, really productive, long player. You know, is he maybe the answer that add to this pass rush rotation to help take help take some of the pressure off of Myles Garrett, and you add him to the line along with Mason Graham, really revamp that defensive front? I think that's certainly in the cards. I think that they have hopes for Cedric Tillman to be the X of this team, and then maybe you add someone else to, be the Y and the Z with Judy. So receiver certainly in play here. I've got my eyes on the two Iowa State guys, Jalen Knoll and Jaden Higgins. Luther Burden's still on the board. So wide receiver is certainly a direction we could see this team go. And then, running back. I mean, Nick Chubb is, still unsigned. And in my opinion, Jerome Ford is more of a running back 2 than a running back 1. So what the Browns' opinion on, the two Ohio State running backs, Travion Henderson, Quinshon Judkins, Caleb Johnson still out there. So, and we know this team needs offensive line. And so, I mean, there's a lot of different ways that this team can go. And I think you look at the board as the teams reset, you see the talent available, and if you're the Browns, I think you got to be pretty excited about the options that you'll have here.
You mentioned you like Jerome Ford as a number 2. He's kind of a home run hitter. So if the Browns were going to kind of look to make kind of, as we've seen kind of around the league, you have your home run hitter, but then you've got your bell cow power back. Who in this draft fits that mold? Because I really think that this is the worst scoring team in the league. I think we need weapons. You got an opportunity to get 2 of them here. I think one certainly needs to be a running back. So who fits that role? If Travion is in that home run mold, maybe he isn't the fit, although I certainly would jump for joy if the Browns took him. Who are the guys that maybe you think you see in that lead role with Ford as that home run hitting complement?
Well, I mean, I think we have to look at Quinshon Judkins, right? I mean, he's a well-built, compact back, powerful at contact, but also has some explosiveness to him. He's just a no-nonsense runner. He can run inside, outside, not going to blow you away with the speed necessarily, but he just knows how to play the position. And I think, you look at the upside on passing downs, what he can do as a pass catcher, what he can do as a blocker. He doesn't fumble. He's a very reliable player. He's durable. So Quinshon Judkins from Ohio State, I know obviously Cleveland fans I think would be happy with that pick, keeping, Ohio State brought Judkins to Ohio and Columbus, and hey, we can just keep him here. I think that's something that would potentially fit. But I agree with what you're saying. I mean, going defensive line at 5, that's fine. In the top 5, you draft players, not positions. You draft the most impactful players. Here in the second round, all right, let's look at where we really need to address certain needs. And, like you said, this team was 32nd in the league last year in offensive scoring, 32nd in the league in third down conversions. So how are we going to help whoever is playing quarterback change those numbers? And, I mentioned those receivers. I think they should be in play. The running backs, Quinshon Judkins, I think that, and I wouldn't rule out Travion just because Jerome Ford is a certain type of back. I don't think that stops you from doubling up and going with Travion Henderson either. Caleb Johnson, I know, is a player they love. Not love, but it's a player they like, I should say. Out of Iowa, a guy that's 6'1", 225. The speed's not going to blow you away, but I think he could be a potential fit as well. So, but this is also a running back draft where they could wait till the 3rd, 4th round and still feel pretty good about the options that they'll have at this point. So, I don't know. I keep coming back to wide receiver, just for adding in someone else to that mix, and pass rushers, because I think those are 2 positions that are going to fly off the board here early in round 2.
Dane, if there is, you mentioned like you're drafting a player in the top 5, and they got your number 4 player on the board in Mason Graham, and in the 30s now you're trying to thread that needle between need and player. You just kind of gave a little lean there that you think running back, maybe D ends, and there's some big defensive ends who are still out there. Running back, receiver, tight end, in terms of best players available, not individual players, but positionally, the depth of those, because you're sitting there at 33, you're at 36, and then you're at 67. Theoretically, you could go one of each. What would be your preferred order in terms of running back here, receiver here, tight end here, if that is the positional breakdown?
Yeah, I mean, and I think this is the point where you start to look at which positions will stretch. Who's going to be available 3rd round, 4th round, and you can afford to wait. And that's where running back, I think, comes in. Now, maybe they have such a high grade on Quinshon Judkins that they don't pass on running back here, or whoever it might be, and they go that way. But like I said, you can wait till 3rd, 4th round and get a R.J. Harvey from UCF, an Ollie Gordon from Oklahoma State. You can upgrade your running back depth chart in a big way, in not doing it here in the 2nd round. How do they feel about Luther Burden? How do they feel about Jalen Knoll? I think both those players would make sense if they went in that direction. And I think receiver, like I said, it's a position a lot of teams are looking to address. So I don't think it's necessarily going to stretch as much as running back will. Tight end, what kind of grade do they have on Mason Taylor? Mason Taylor's universally liked around the league. There's a lot of teams that are in on Mason Taylor, and I think there's a good chance Mason Taylor's off the board in the first 10 picks. The Jets, there's several teams that will be in on Mason Taylor. But, that's a position we know the Browns have been looking at. And they could wait. Terrence Ferguson's one of my favorite 3rd-round guys this year.
Yep.
Harold Fannin from Bowling Green could certainly be in the conversation at that point. One player that I'm really interested in, going away from offense, though, is Will Johnson from Michigan, who the talent says he's a 1st-round player, but not having a 40-yard dash, the speed questions, and then the medicals. The medicals are kind of the red flag here. That's why he fell out of the 1st round. Teams worried about the knee. Teams worrying about some of the soft tissue injuries. But where is it where he's completely off the board, or is it, hey, if he gets to a certain point, we'll roll the dice with Will Johnson and see what we have? That, to me, I'm really interested in the Will Johnson slide and where that ends tonight.
Dane, if the Browns staying on the defensive side of the ball, because I am steadfast in my belief we need to come out of tonight with a running back, receiver, and tight end. If there was to be a pick on defense, you mentioned defensive end, you mentioned corners. I think this team still has a pretty big need at safety. You're going into the season with Ronnie Hickman, who I do like, but projected as your starting free safety. So that is a position that interests me. And then the other one, which is not nearly as fun to talk about, but the reality of the situation, if JOK is limited or worse, is there a linebacker that you like in this 2nd round?
Carson Schlesinger from UCLA, certainly, and it's not the strength of this linebacker class is rounds 4 or 5, basically. A few might go in the 3rd, but for the most part, rounds 4, rounds 5 is where I think we're going to see the most linebackers. But if they were to go in that direction here in the 2nd, Carson Schlesinger is, I think, certainly worthy of a pick in the 30s. The speed's outstanding. The instincts are outstanding. He's a little more finesse than in terms of the hands and taking on contact, but he's just a fun player to watch, easy to appreciate because he keys and drives so well. His ability to sniff out plays, go and make the plays, it really jumps off the film. I mean, and it's not, he led the nation in solo tackles this year. I mean, he was all over the place. So Schlesinger, I think, would be a home run pick if they went that way here in the 30s. And like I mentioned with corner, I mean, and that's a good point about safety too. But with Nick Emmanwori still available, is that someone that they would potentially look at? And Worry is known more as the combine darling, the guy that tested off the charts, but he has good tape too. And his teammates just spoke really highly of his practice habits and how smart he was during practice and all those things. So even Worry, I think, is a position or a player that we could see come off the board here pretty quickly in round 2. And I'm also interested to see where the Mike Green slide ends up. Mike Green had a couple things off the field, but I've spoken to teams they sound like they're okay with it. And so Mike Green, is there a certain point where it's like, all right, enough's enough. We're going to take a chance on this guy, and could that potentially be for a team like the Browns?
All right, Dane, let's take us out of it. The headline in day one for you was what?
The headline for me was the Browns trading out. Like that was to me because we heard rumblings of it earlier in the day. I took it as more as rumors than it was actually going to happen, but hey, it happened, and it created a domino effect too. Because if that doesn't happen, the Jaguars likely take Ashton Genty at 5, which means the Raiders probably go Kelvin Banks, and it's just a domino effect that changed the entire first round. And so that was a really interesting pivot point in the draft. I think what a lot of people are wondering is, the Shedeur Sanders slide. And I hate to even call it a slide because, look, this is what I've been saying this since October. Like, Shedeur has always been more of a late one, more of an early 2, day 2 type of player. That's just who he is. And we thought there was a good chance he could have gone in the top 5 just because quarterback desperation is a real thing. And in this draft, he was kind of next up. But now it's going to be interesting to see where Shedeur ends up because I think, the Saints, I'm told, are out. I don't think the Raiders are going to go that direction, although I wouldn't completely rule them out. Pittsburgh seems like the most likely landing spot, but they don't have a second-round pick. So are we talking third round or possible trade-up? There are just only so many landing spots for Shedeur Sanders, and it's going to be really interesting to see where he ultimately ends up tonight, where and which team. So that was something that I know, it was a big topic last night as we went through the first round. Shedeur Sanders did not make my final mock draft, so I wasn't very surprised, but I know a lot of people were.
You're the best, buddy. We could not do the draft without you.
No,
quite literally. So thank you so much, and appreciate your time and your expertise today.
No, anytime, guys. Enjoy tonight.
All right, there he goes. Dane Brugler, The Athletic. He is the author of The Beast. He's on the Twisted Tea Hotline, presented by Twisted Tea Hard Iced Tea, official sponsor of your Cleveland Browns. Keep it Twisted Cleveland. You listen to Cleveland Browns Daily on 850 ESPN Cleveland. Add more fun to your fan with the Ballybet Sportsbook app. Download today, get 50 back in bonus bets with your first wager of 10 or more. Ballybet, official sports betting partner of your Cleveland Browns. What did obviously, you're doing the radio network, and so you're locked into that. But as you were watching the draft, what jumped out to you outside of what we did? And then we'll get into kind of where we see us going here in the second round here momentarily.
So a couple of things actually really did jump out to me in this. And first would be the AFC South saying this is an arms race. We need to be able to score the football, and I applaud them for that. I thought that was you get a quarterback, you get the best tight end in the draft, you get who am I blanking on? Oh, and Travis Hunter. That's right, the best receiver in the draft.
That's right.
I like that. NFC South, also a little bit of an arms race.
Yeah.
In the sense that McMillan goes, and apparently Bryce Young was like, I have to have this guy. Bryce Young and McMillan had been throwing together out in California for a month.
It was weird, and nobody had him mocked that high.
There were Carolina. There were a few.
There
were a few,
okay.
But that was the highest. So there were some people that maybe they saw that and said, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I like that. And then you think about adding Emeka Egbuka to a team that already has Mike Evans, a team that already has Godwin, and that already has Jalen McMillan. Jalen McMillan on his rookie year last year was like a third or a fourth round pick. It caught 8 touchdowns.
Yeah.
So that's a real luxury pick. But I don't know why give Godwin all that money.
So my thing was Godwin had that horrific injury at the end of last
Yeah,
year. And
but
so
they paid him a lot.
They did, but now you just slide Emeka in there, and Mike Evans is and he's in the slot, and you're ready to go. Mech's a pro. He's a pro receiver.
Yep.
Like he's plug and play, ready to go. I noticed that too. There was some different, like the teams. So we're in the position of we need to stockpile as many guys who can come in and start. Like we need a lot of starters is what we need. And that's what this draft will be about in the second and third round tonight. But then there were teams you mentioned. I thought Tampa was interesting. Like Tampa's like, all right, Godwin's going to be out. Here's a pro receiver we're going to get at 19. Let's not overthink it. Let's put him in. Let's give Bake all these weapons. My God, does he have a lot of weapons?
Yeah.
Let's give him all these weapons to work with. I ended up being 4 Buckeyes in the first round. Tyleik Williams went to Detroit. Nobody had him going that high. Well, why did that happen? Because there was an incredible run on defensive tackles that started with us.
It was a trenches draft.
It was a trenches draft. Yeah. And defensive ends, I think there were 8 D ends or D tackles in the first.
The Falcons drafted 2 and gave up a first-round pick to go to number 26.
That blew my mind. I've never heard of that. I could not believe they did that.
You couldn't have heard of it.
I thought what the Giants did was very strange. I thought it was very strange. Abdul Carter, I get it. Now, they have D ends. They got a bunch of them. Their D line's really good. They got a bunch of them, but if he's one of the 5 blue chips, fine. You take him and you sleep well at night. Okay, fine. But then to trade back in to get Jackson Dart in the first round after Pittsburgh had passed on him, where was the intel saying that you're getting him in a quarterback room that you've added him to that has Russell Wilson, Jameis Winston, and now him, and a coach in front office that feel like they're on the thinnest possible ice? So now a first-round quarterback, so they'll be pressured to play Jackson
No, they've
Dart.
already stated last night, Dable.
That he's not?
Russell Wilson is our starter.
Okay, so we just did this last year in Pittsburgh. So Wilson's a starter. So you used a first-round pick on a quarterback who will not play this year if you follow your plan, right? And if it goes the way that you think it's going to go, because that's not a very good team, you will be out of a job. So the quarterback you just took in the first round, you won't even coach. So that one was puzzling to me. I did not understand that at all.
The only thing I could think is they thought the Rams were going to take him as an heir apparent to Stafford, but I don't believe that was the case. So it was very surprising. They could have just probably chilled and been fine.
By the way, that's where I think Shadour's going to go. I think he'll go Rams.
Maybe a good fit for him
As a weightless guy.
Yep.
On that. So anyway, who knows on all of it? But that's what jumped out to me was just how teams approach this. And I think our trade at 2 fits into that. Jacksonville feels like they were one electric playmaker away, one blue chip player away that you got a game plan for every time out from competing with Houston at the top of that division. So they went and got him. So to them, like everybody says, oh, they gave up too much. Well, not in the eye of them.
Right.
I mean, we see him and they're celebrating. They're going to put him. They're going to put him on the same field with Brian Thomas, and Trevor Lawrence is going to throw him the ball. And they got Tank Bigsby and Travis Etienne and stop us.
Yeah.
That's their view.
That's
right?
their view.
We're saying we need a bunch of things, and this is going to help us plug a bunch of holes. Some of the holes we're plugging you could see coming, others you couldn't. Like if, for example, if JOK doesn't play football again, and who knows, we haven't gotten a concrete answer on all of that. All of a sudden, that's a need.
I think we'll have.
You might tonight.
You might get a tip if they take a linebacker early. If they take and Dane Brugler said Schlesinger would be a home run pick. If that ends up being a Browns pick, then I think that unfortunately tells you not great things about the status.
You and I do the
JOK.
show looking at Nick Chubb every day,
day.
who's on the wall over there, and that's not something that anybody saw coming. So there were these unforeseen holes in the roster that now we need to fill.
Yeah,
and it's a lot. So that's how that trade makes sense from our vantage point. Is you're going to get, hopefully, in a draft where the difference between 8 and 40 or 8 and 50 is minimal, you're going to get 4 of the top 56, and there ain't that much difference. And then next year, in a draft that most people say is loaded, you're going to have 2 ones.
Yeah.
So that's how you do it.
Yeah, which is interesting today. If let's say that there is a cluster, if you get an offer at 33 to move back a few spots, you probably can still get the running back that you want there. And I think if you can pick up a future 2, so now you got 2 ones, 2 twos next year, I would certainly be open to that because you have signaled through this that the 2025, in my opinion, and I don't know if this is the case, not that they can't be competitive, they most certainly can, but that this team is not going to be the team, barring an unforeseen incredible season out of Kenny Pickett. That is
not a player away.
That is the 26 and beyond football team.
Yes.
So if you can move off of 33, and I'd imagine there are going to be a lot of calls about 33, as you kind of look at the order, let's look at just who could maybe, where you could move. So could the Raiders at 37 say, there's somebody we want very badly? You have Geno Smith, you've got Brock Bowers, you've got Ashton Genty, but could you use a Luther Burden?
Well, I think the trade up to 33 would be Will Johnson, Mike Green. Like Mike Green was a top 15. Where'd Dane have
10.
Okay, so he's a big time player. The Marshall defensive end. He dropped, never sitting first round value.
How bad are the things that he is?
I'm not familiar, so I'm not going to talk about things I don't know because I don't want to get in trouble there.
Yeah.
So I don't know about that. But Will Johnson, there were like 4 kids on NCAA 2025 who were 99 overalls, and Will Johnson's one of them. So that's what people thought of him. Now, he battled injury a little bit last year, but he's a top-flight corner at his best. So that's somebody that – is that a guy? There's the tackle. Who am I looking for? Oh, then and the other one is the edge out of Boston College. So, like, is there a run on these edges that make people come up to 33 to get an edge? And if that's the case, come on up, and we'll take another 2 next year, and we'll do it that way.
How far back would you be willing to go? I don't think it's as critical as it was.
I don't think it matters
early.
as much. I think,
but I'd want to stay at 36, and Saints are at 40, Raiders 37. Teams that need corners or edge, the Titans need an edge. Could the Titans come from 35 to 33 for something? The Bears have 39 and 41.
That's
and
when
the Bears
I
are in a good spot.
That's what I thought of.
They're going to be good.
If there was something the Bears wanted at 33, I mean, you could go down to 39 or 41.
Cowboys really want a receiver. Could you go back to 44 if
Yeah.
they come up for a Luther Burden?
Yeah.
I mean, you could. And I think you could still get one of those running backs at 44 or 36.
Yeah. 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 I'm with you. So potentially that could be the thinking tonight. All right, John Greco, former Brown, going to join us coming up next. You'll listen to Cleveland Browns Daily. It's presented by Ballybet, official sports betting partner of Cleveland Browns, and by Howard Hanna Real Estate, official real estate partner of your Cleveland Browns. Celebrate the excitement of the NFL Draft at the Crib, presented by Howard Hanna. Join Cleveland Browns alumni Josh Cribbs, John Greco, and Chomps today from 1 to 3, 1560 Queen Anne's Gate in Westlake. They educate you on the market and help you draft your dream home. And speaking of that, John Greco joins us on the Twisted Tea Hotline, presented by Twisted Tea Hard Iced Tea, official sponsor of your Cleveland Browns. Keep it twisted, Cleveland. John, thank you so much for taking the time, buddy. Set the scene out there. What's going on at the Crib right now, buddy?
Gentlemen, thank you for having me. It's an awesome scene. Beautiful weather today. I'm in a gorgeous neighborhood over here in Westlake, Ohio. Fans, home buyers, people, I don't want to say nosy neighbors, but nosy neighbors have been coming in, checking us out. I'm hanging out with my former teammates, one of my favorite teammates, Josh Cribbs, and Howard Hanna's put on a great event. It's been a nice day.
Sorry, we were distracted by a great senior swag walk by right there.
Yeah, good one.
All right, when you, as a guard and an elite guard in your own right, when you see the Browns draft a guy like Mason Graham, what does he bring to the table, and how is he going to help this defense and this team be better? Because I think when you're drafted 5th overall, there are rightfully so very lofty expectations for not just an immediate impact, but an immediate major impact.
Yeah, absolutely. Great question. And, playing on the interior for as long as I did, talented pass rushers and run stoppers and athletic guys in the middle there that can, not only eat up double teams and prevent interior offensive linemen from getting to the second level, but are also effective pass rushers. That makes life a living hell, guys, for interior offensive linemen. So coupling Mason with a generational player like Myles Garrett, and getting a push in the middle of that pocket, I think that's key. If we're able to generate push in the middle of the pocket and quarterbacks all of a sudden have pressure in their face and in their lap, that's going to only cause a feeding frenzy for the guys rushing the corners on the edge. So I think, you like to get that pressure on the edge, but if a quarterback has not only the guys in front of him blocking in his lap and in his face all day, but opposing defenders' hands hitting him and affecting the throws, it's going to be great, and it's only going to help the second and third levels behind him. So I was excited about the pick, and you have two young guys in the middle there with Michael Jr. And obviously Mason. So I'm excited about the future of this defensive line.
When we hear about everybody talking about him, that kind of, he was the best player on the best defense in the college football when they won the title. He was the reason, really, that was a big factor why they beat Ohio State this year, went on to win the national title. We keep hearing about his wrestling background and that he's a leverage monster. What does that mean in practical terms when we're watching the game? How does that translate into what we hope and expect to see?
It's the fight within the fight, guys, and in the trenches. I mean, look, if you look at it, the best teams in football, they build from the inside out, the top down. And you look at Philadelphia last year, and they had great fronts, both on offense and defense. And, getting back to your leverage question, if you can play low to the ground and you play sturdy, and I mentioned taking on those double teams, and if you could eat up multiple blockers, and, the Browns have athletic linebackers that can run and make plays in space. So if they are eating up blockers from the first level, it's only going to free those guys up to make more tackles behind the line of scrimmage, tackles for loss, and make big plays. So I like it, that leverage battle up front, because we're trying to get those guys moving and displace them off the line of scrimmage. But if they're eating up blockers and making athletic plays and using their leverage and bending and disrupting in the backfield, that's really how defensive lines eat. And I like what I saw. Obviously, I live down in Columbus. Bo, listen to your show. I don't know if I'm allowed to do that plug.
You are,
but
yeah.
Yeah.
Come on anytime you want, by the way. I didn't, at any point, we'd love to have you on.
Yes.
But yeah, watching Michigan and being around Ohio State and really being more, I guess, aware of Big Ten football now that I live in Columbus, seeing guys like that, disruptors, it makes a big difference, and they can ruin games. And that's, I think, was the Browns' mindset. They said, let's get a disruptor in the middle of the defense where we are just wreaking havoc on opposing quarterbacks and offensive lines.
John, you mentioned, and I've heard other people do this too, and it makes sense because Andrew was with Howie, in Philly and the Philly model and all of that. Well, here's the other thing, though, with Philly. They have Jalen Hurts. They have A.J. Brown. They have Devonta Smith. And they have Saquon Barkley. So if our lines of scrimmage and build it from that way are there now, these next picks today need to be attempts at swings at those weapons. Do they not? We got to score it a little.
Of course. That is, I mean, everybody that I've talked to today, they said, what are we doing with these next 4 picks? And the consensus is running back, receiver, maybe offensive line, and linebacker I've heard, but playmakers. I mean, let's be honest. That's what everybody knows that this team needs to make an immediate impact. And you're right. I mean, you mentioned those guys with Philly. It's almost like, how the hell are they able to put that together? And it's great front office work and homework behind the scenes. So that's what we're trying to get to. And I think, I use the term, it's like they did such a great thing last night in acquiring more picks. And I know people want immediate gratification, but almost there's times where you do something that's not as sexy, but it makes more sense down the road, and it's going to make your that way go out and get the big splash receiver, playmaker, or one of the Buckeye running backs. And there's so many good playmakers and good options here, kind of in the meat of this draft, in the early second, mid, late second round, in the third, where you're going to get quality guys. And let's be honest, picks 33 and 36, guys, those are glorified first rounders. Mm-hmm. Whether you have somebody that is a first round talent that maybe slipped because of an injury or worry that somebody saw on tape, God knows when. But, that's what you get. You get first round quality that slips for one reason or another, and it makes your team better.
You're the best, buddy. Still a little time to come see you out at the crib, and I know that the folks will be running out there to do so. Appreciate you hopping on with us today, pal.
Guys, thank you. Good to talk to you.
All right, there he goes. Former Brown, John Greco, joining the program on the Twisted Tea Hotline, presented by Twisted Tea Hard Iced Tea, official sponsor of your Cleveland Browns, and doing so from the crib, 1560 Queen Anne's Gate in Westlake, from 1 to 3. Yes, sir?
Yeah, I don't know if you saw this yesterday, but Derek Harmon, who was drafted by the Steelers.
Oregon. Yep.
From Oregon, went right after it was announced that he was drafted. His mom's been on life support, and went and told his mom that he was drafted, and then she has passed away, which is so sad, but kind of an incredible story of human perseverance that she was able to make it and get to hear that. And man, what a powerful story that is.
Yeah, I saw that
sad
story. Yeah, very, very sad.
Thoughts certainly to Derek Harmon and his family.
Yeah, and you knew that was kind of part of the lead up to him and wanting to get to that point. One other thing, from very different perspective, but we talk so much about how we've never been smarter when it comes to identifying talent that's then drafted, talent that starts out being recruited, then drafted, with the exception of receiver and quarterback. Or, I'm sorry, running back and quarterback, where it's a little bit tougher. But I would say this. This is a pretty interesting stat. Last night, of the 32 first-round picks, 26 of them were 4 or 5-star high school athletes.
Yeah.
Okay? Yeah. So we are now two of the 6 who weren't are Cam Ward and Ashton Genty. So 2 of the 6 who weren't are those 2.
Yeah. Graham was a 4-star.
But 26 of the 32 were 4 and 5s.
That means you
can identify them at 16.
Yeah.
We identify them and we get it right. We're better at it than we've ever been at understanding what talent is and what it's not.
Who does that? Who?
I mean, how many names you want?
Who is the so is it a group of
There's
people?
There's a ton of it. Dude, when I first got into covering college football, it was there was one guy who Luganbill was one of them. Tom Luganbill was one of them. And the other guy, I'm blanking on his name. He was a guy from the South who loved Notre Dame. Was one of there were like 2 guys who did it. Now there's 50 recruiting services. Man. Tom Lemming.
Tom Lemming. Yeah.
Tom Lemming and Luganbill. Those are the 2 guys who did it initially. Now there's 100 recruiting services that do it. Every college football team has a general manager that uses those services, and those services rely on those general managers. Like, we know there are no surprises anymore. That's just at the top of the draft. There isn't.
There's Mason Graham.
There he goes.
Meeting as the top of the heap right there. It's the top of the mountain.
Top of the food chain conversation right there outside the studio. There you go.
Yeah.
You're going to see
I feel
this
like we
on
can
our social
see,
channels at
we
some
can
point.
see, we can hear a little bit better in here than I ever recall us being able to hear.
Noted for some of the conversations we have, because potentially if we can, that would be a reciprocal hearing,
Yeah.
certainly.
This
So-
is new.
This is new. Yeah, this is new. So much more to come. You listen to Cleveland Browns Daily on 850 ESPN Cleveland. I'm going to tell you this.
Tell me.
ESPN took a bunch of people in a convention room at a hotel and turned it into a television spectacle and a live event spectacle. This is a man announcing names and people walking across the screen. It'll do 15 million, I promise. Last night,
Yes.
it's amazing.
It's amazing.
Kuipers, by the way, I agree. He should be. I saw somebody.